Endwalker is the worst expansion I've ever played. That's bait. That's bait. Yeah, that's bait. This is bait. This is pure bait.
Hey Buns, today we need to talk about the...
Whoa, she's not wearing the ears. It's a serious video. Shake. All right, I'm ready. I'm ready and I'm pumped. I'm pumped. I'm ready to go.
Endwalker patches, because look, this is a video that I wanted to make quite some time ago, but I myself actually got really burnt out for the first time in the entire time I've been playing these games, which is since 2015, since Heaven's Ward. I've been an active player ever since then, and it was the first time that I actually felt like I really needed to step away and take a breather, and I did. I did just that, because although I had thought about a lot of these things before...
I know this is not relevant, but I don't know why Zeplas' background keeps changing. Every time I talk to her, she's either in a kitchen, or she's in a plant place, or she's by a window. I feel like she's on some sort of rotating platform that just circles around her apartment or whatever. And it's constantly, I know it's minor, but it does bother me a lot, actually. It really bothers me. She's just constantly like circling around the room. It's different positions. It does bother me. Because like, I feel like she have a stream setup of some description. She's like in a kitchen. Then suddenly she's like in a bathroom or something. Discord, I'm with you, brother. Ravens also, because we're Zeplas' biggest fans, so we've got all our merch on. We're Zeplas' biggest fans. Do we have to take the bunnies off?
Well, am I just being burnt out? Am I being unfairly negative? Am I being a hater?
Oh, let's play a game before I listen to a bit of this. It is half an hour long, and frankly, I can't listen to Zepla for more than 10 minutes because that accent makes me want to die. But what could be the reason? The restart of the story giving us like different direction and stuff, and it's not as powerful as Shadowbringers. I think that's fair comment, but at the same time, it's the start of a new story. It's like you're going into a Realm Reborn, so I fully expected that for Endwalker. The rating's been good as far as everybody's telling me. I haven't done the Savage stuff or the Ultimates, but we will. And been very fun. Oh, she did get burnt out on Omega though. Right? Yeah, she did burn out on Omega. She told me that. She was like, I just couldn't do that anymore. Let's see.
So I took that break, and I came back feeling refreshed and revitalized and in love with the game again, and I'm having fun again. I'm, working on my glams. I'm raiding.
Working on my glams, number one.
Got my bluebird bow, which I love, and I can't wait to get the bunny staff. These are amazing. So looking forward to Dawn Trail. Looking forward to the Fan Fest in London, and overall, back in love with this game that means
I
so
think
much
it's probably
to me.
fair
It's
comment
really
that the
home
Golbez
for me.
story appears for
But
now
with
at
all
least to
that
just be
said,
filler.
Looking back
does.
now with a
It
much
seems
more
they're just
clear
establishing
mind,
zero.
I think I definitely feel that the concerns that I had before, some of them definitely had real merit. And I think it's not a coincidence that it's not just me, but almost everyone I know seems to be burnt out with FFXAV right now and just not logging into the game or raid logging or just completely disinterested and feeling like, well, there's so little pressure to log in and I could either log in.
This feels like me when I was just playing World of Warcraft. And the solution is simple. Just stop logging in for a bit. It's fine. It's totally fine. Just stop logging in for a bit. It's all good. It's totally fine. Yeah, this feels exactly like me when I'm like, I'm one game Andy, and I just play World of Warcraft every fucking day, and like, there's nothing for me to do anymore, and it's not giving me enough stuff. I want more stuff. I need more. I need more. I need more. And it's like, well, if you just play a couple of other games, this doesn't happen at all. Certainly MMOs. It's totally fine. You can feel, I felt like this though, assuming that's where she's going, I'm guessing. But she's going that way. I felt this way.
In now or maybe next year or maybe in 5 years, And so, yes, there's still one more patch, but we know exactly what is going to be in it because for better or for worse, this has been very, very predictable too. And I'm seeing social groups sort of dissolve and it sucks. I'm concerned about the state of the MMO And although I'm not doomsaying, okay, don't get me wrong. I'm not out here like, oh, well, this is the end of FXIV. It's all over. It's ruined. No, I'm
Who
not
says
saying
XIV?
that. Okay. But what I am saying is that
I'm going to have to educate you when you're here next month.
there are concerning signs, and I'm seeing less engagement from everyone I personally know. And then I thought, well, you know, maybe it's just my group of people that I know. So I went on Twitter and I asked the question to do a vibe check of the community. Be honest. How do you feel about the Endwalker patches? And I was honestly shocked by the number of people that just felt like it's underwhelming, it's lackluster, it's just not that interesting. These are not people who are saying, it's terrible, I hate it, it sucks. That's not really what I'm hearing.
I went on Twitter and asked people to complain, and I was shocked. She's really good. She's good. She's really good. I went on Twitter and I asked people for their honest take on something.
Much. What I'm hearing is it's mid. It's fine.
I can agree with that. That's fine.
I don't really care that much. I'm hearing apathy. I'm hearing like it's okay. And honestly, that's not gonna cut it. Like, if we want to keep people playing this game long term and have people to play with, I feel like
anybody else feel like she's going to lunge at the camera, like with that arm position?
Get more people excited about it and get more people happy, looking forward to log in. I can't wait to log in and play FXIV because, especially this year, I think what we're starting to see is that there are a ton of really quality games coming out, and they are, for better or worse, in competition for your time. And it's wonderful that FXIV does not, pressure you so much to log in. It has never done that. Mm-hmm. But in the past expansions, we have, although the game hasn't been pressuring you too much to log in, there have been exciting things that we could all log in together to do, that people had reasons to do. Yes, it is normal for, after a patch has been out for a while, people to get burnt out and bored. It's normal for, at the end of an expansion's life cycle, for people to get, well, I'll just go do other stuff. That's okay. That always happens. But what I'm seeing is this happening soon after, like a week after a major patch comes out, or like I started to see this phenomenon after the first major patch of the whole expansion, 0.1 patch, 0.2 patch, 0.3 patch.
It's part of this because I had to be a little careful here because I have not been along for an FF14 patch cycle ever. This is my first time, right? There's no big grind in the game yet, like a Bosnia or a Eureka or like a restoration project, something like that, which is like the day-to-day players always jumped into and were like, that's what they want to do, right? Because I would be like, oh, Eureka's out. I don't enjoy Eureka. I'm just going to leave it alone. But like for the day-to-day players, that massive big project that's like, okay, this is our long-term goal. I could do all the relic weapons in Bosnia or whatever and grind them out and just be playing and always have a project to do. That's exactly what she's saying. Okay, I think that's fair, right? I think that's totally fair.
This should not be as big of a phenomenon as it is.
What is there right now to do? Like, for me, I've still got a million projects to do in FF14. I could essentially play FF14 for the next 12 months and always have something to do because I'm catching up on years and years worth of content. It's like to do all the classes, to do all the jobs, to do all the professions, to finish all the hunts, to finish all the scrolls, the treasure maps, things like that. I've got endless things to do. The Savages have still got to do. The Ultimates have still got to do. I've got like tons and tons and tons and tons of things to do. But I assume Zeplas has done all that kind of stuff. In which case, it's like, I need the new thing. Because I've done all your other shit. I need the new thing. And that's not quite there yet. Or hasn't arrived in Endwalker, which is a fair comment for somebody who's like diehard into it.
So early on in the life cycle of the expansion, and so
yeah, it's the issue you run into, Boxer. Yeah, for sure.
And we're going to talk about all the contributing factors.
But typically, FF hasn't had this issue, is what I'm getting from this.
I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't be having fun. If you're having fun, great, keep at it. But this is an MMO, right? And we want people to be excited to log in. If they're not, then
I am.
It's just not as good.
I won
It's not
anyway.
a
The wind
single
blows
player
the other
game,
day.
even though lately it feels like they are trying to turn it into that. One thing I keep hearing from people is that, oh, I'm burnt out, I'm burnt out, I'm burnt out. But I don't think that's even the right word, because with burnout, you think normally that's when you do something so much, so often, every day, so hard and so long that you just get sick of it and you can't think about it. You don't want to think about it anymore. You're tired of it. And it's such a relief to stop. But this isn't really what I'm seeing with people. These are people that want to do something. It's more like how burnout is actually thought of in the car world, where you just sit there, you stay put, and you're spinning the wheels, but you're not going anywhere.
It could be friends leaving. That's the biggest killer of any MMO experience, is your friends leaving.
That point is not right now.
When your friends start leaving,
stationary.
and you're like, I want to stay here,
really
that's when it
hearing,
gets really
I think
sad.
a lot of us are
in
at
MMOs.
this point just sick of hearing is, well, Yoshi P says that you can just go play other games. If you're not happy with them, just go play other. Well, that's what I've been doing, okay? I played other games for 6 months. Yes, I'm glad I can play other games. I'm glad that FXV doesn't pressure me to the extent that World of Warcraft
Stop saying XIV.
But
I'm gonna throw
I
a
think
drink at
that
you.
these are two ends of the spectrum. World of Warcraft being on the extreme end of,
you.
oh my god, I have to be on this treadmill and I have to keep up or I'm going to fall behind and it sucks. That's a way to burn out quickly. And now FXAV is so far and going further in the other end of the spectrum.
Hang on, my dead dog's barking. I should take the bunny ears off. One sec. All right. Okay.
Oh, there's so little pressure on me that I could either do this today or I could do it next year. You know,
Why are you
this
saying
also has a
X?
similar effect of just having people not in the game.
IV.
They're just not playing the game,
video.
ultimately. That's the end result. And this damages social groups. It damages
trying
the
to
health
hurt
of the
me?
game and the longevity of the game, because a lot of times people will go play other games and they just won't come back. Seeing FFXAV
Ooh.
go down this path where people...
I don't think that's true of 14. From what I could tell, and I've obviously based it on our community, a lot of FF14 players come for a bit, go away, and come back. More so than other games. Like on a more regular basis. I'm not sure that's true of 14, but I could be wrong. But my feeling is that a lot of people... I mean, I get the feeling a lot of people just play for MSQ and then go away. Like, they're not interested in raiding. They'll do like the current easy mode raid or the alliance raid and stuff like that, but then they'll dip and then they'll come back. I think that's been a really powerful strength of 14 for a long time, and something that Squeenix is really, really happy about is like if our story is good. Now, if Dawn Trail's story is also kind of mid, then you've got a problem, right? Then you've got a problem. But as far as I know, that's not really the case.
People feel less and less motivated or interested or incentivized at all to log in at end game. I think that it's really helpful to listen. I cannot believe I'm saying to Ian Hazako's.
Nothing wrong with Ian.
Ian's
a good dude.
I stand by this because he does explain really well why it is important to incentivize players somewhat to play the game that you're making. And this is from the interview that Mike from PreachGaming had with Ian at Blizzard HQ about 6 months ago. And this particular part of the interview really stood out to me because, to me, I heard efficacy all over this.
You know, our goal is never habit in the sense of like you have to
log in. What a cool video. I wonder who made it.
When you don't want to. Our goal is for you to want to log in. Our goal is for you to want to play World of Warcraft and to look forward to getting back into the game, to have something you want to complete, something you want to chase. And if you're not wanting it, then getting you to do it despite that isn't a victory for us. It's just burning people out. And so I think giving people the freedom to feel like they can take a step away, do something in real life, play another game for a while without falling behind is valuable. I think the one thing that we do worry about when it comes to, you know, sort of the raid logging phenomenon or people taking breaks is the social nature of the game, is, you know, sort of the critical mass of keeping a group together. If the person who is really excited to log in to do things with their guildmates logs in and no one from their guild is online because of whatever reason, and then they just log back off kind of disappointed because they were hoping to play with friends but their friends weren't around, that can be an issue. And I think that's something, you know, going back to WoD, to Warlords of Draenor,
you do.
That was probably the peak of the raid logging era, where really there was like, other than checking your garrison, if it wasn't raid night, there was nothing to do. That felt like a step too far toward that end of the spectrum.
We joked.
Yeah, let's add some context to that. So there's a fine line that MMOs have to walk, and World of Warcraft has learnt this lesson very distinctly. Forcing players to log in, because if they don't, you fall behind, is not a fun experience. And that's the way World of Warcraft went for many years, right? So we're talking about Torghast specifically in that conversation and the dailies, is that World of Warcraft moved to, we need to force players to be online, otherwise we run into the problem where social groups fall apart. And I still believe this intensely. Is yes, I have a million jobs to do in Final Fantasy XIV, but most of them don't involve any other players at all. I can level my jobs on my own. I could do my professions on my own. It'd be easier with other people, but I could totally do that all solo, besides the Savage stuff, right? Then we get into group content. And MMOs, for me, as much as people hate me for this, as we talked about in our recent YouTube video, and lots of people got fired up about it, are intrinsically tied to social groups. I really still believe that. Like, yes, there are lone wolf players, 100% there are those players, but intrinsically, the best experience I believe you have in an MMO is when you have your social group involved with you, which certainly in our community has involved into many IRL meetups, long life friends, like permanent life friends who share these loves and passions with you in so many ways. And I think a good example of someone in our community is probably Furion, who is, and admittedly, he's kind of a one-game Andy. He loves Final Fantasy XIV almost exclusively. He's played some Path of Exile and stuff. But when we go to Guild Wars 2, or we go to do World of Warcraft Hardcore, or go and do things like that, he's not getting involved with that because he wants to play Final Fantasy XIV. And that's his favorite game, and that's what he wants to be a part of. And so when we're not doing stuff in that game, that social group has kind of disappeared. And it's like, oh, okay. I'm missing out on a huge portion of my play experience because that interaction that I have when I log in, of seeing my free company chat moving, or, you know, there's like things going on, there's events happening, or I'm streaming, we're going to do hunts, we're going to do things like this. It's like I can get involved in that, or we're going to do like the Around Reborn Savages. All that stuff just isn't there because they're all over here playing a different game, and I don't want to play that game. I want to play this one, and my connections have dissolved, at least temporarily, because, you know, we move around games a lot. But that's why I stopped playing WoW as well. Like, yeah, World of Warcraft's systems And I think it's a balance, right? It's a total balance. Is if your social group goes down, the systems of the game become inherently more important because you're looking for that solo style of play. And when that's not there, it just gets ever more important. It becomes much bigger deal. Whereas I played and I compare this to like playing BFA and part of Shadowlands in World of Warcraft, is that the system stuff was horrible, but my social stuff was really high. And therefore I was still having a really good time despite the game. Does that make sense? I'm still really enjoying my time playing this game despite the game. The game is like horrendous. The game is awful. It wants me to do like island expeditions, farm fucking essences, do the Maw, do Torghast. And I don't want to do any of that stuff. But I'm playing with really good friends, Alex and Crusher and Ross and all those people, right? Like I'm playing with these really fun people. And therefore the game itself is almost a completely, almost tertiary factor in my enjoyment of my game time. But when that social circle dissolves and like people step away, your guild breaks up or whatever, the game starts to be the main focus. And then you realize, oh shit, there's just not a lot here for me to do. And I'm kind of just bored now. And it sucks and it's not fun. And I don't want to do that because maybe I look at what my friends are doing or I go and play a single player game or something like that. And it changes. Like there's the social element is so important. And I think it's the main crux for a lot of people. How many people, I mean, we could do a quick guess here. How many people stopped playing an MMO, at least for like some period of time, because their guild disbanded or their free company disbanded? And I bet it's not an insignificant amount of people who was like, my social circle fell apart and I just stopped playing. Because without that element, yeah, you can see it here, right? Without that element, which is like a lot of the fun. And I think a huge part of that is, it's almost impossible for any of us sat here right now to have somebody in our real life circle of social circles to share our very, very niche interests. And that exists even within MMOs. Like my brother plays MMOs, my nephew plays MMOs, my niece plays MMOs, both my nieces play MMOs, my cousins play MMOs. I don't share the same goals with them despite the fact that we're playing the same game. My goals are so massively different than those people. Zeplas replying, nobody can say FFXIV faster than me. Nobody. Have I got my ears on? Got my ears on for you. Even the cat plays MMOs. I have all these people in my circles who are gamers, who love MMOs, but to find somebody who specifically enjoys the content, I had to reach out to like Southerners like Alex and Loz, which is disgusting. Right? I had to reach out to people like Clog, who like Greg's, disgusting. People like Ross, who also eat Greg's, disgusting. I had to reach out to people from Sweden, Netherlands, all these people who are born in completely different geographical locations to find the exact niche people that I wanted to game with. And I can't find that in real life. And that's a really special connection in my eyes. That's a really special connection. How many people, like we went to dinner with Brackers and Decadence the other day, and we could sit and talk about Final Fantasy XIV Savage Raiding. Could any of us do that, like, as a norm in real life? Like, as a nice dinner out? And sit and talk about Savage Raiding and glams, you know, and these kind of things? Fuck no, you totally can't do that. You totally can't do that. You absolutely cannot do that. But we can with these people, which is why when we meet up, and often the case when we meet people, is it's like, okay, I spoke to them for 3 seconds, and suddenly we were like best friends. Our Australia trip, right? We all went to I was in Australia. I met up with like 10 or 12 really close members of the community who are here right now. And did it take more than 5 seconds for us to be like, yeah, this is everybody we know? Even though we'd never met in person, and then actually like trolling around a zoo. This thing's gonna kill us. You know, doing shit like that like nobody in your real life circle would get at all. Absolutely no one would fucking get what the hell is going on, but it totally works when you're there. Or let's go and play Mario Kart tonight at a gaming bar and shit like that, you know?
Around whenever Endwalker came out that
I still think she's gonna lunge at the camera.
The garrison of Final Fantasy XIV, and I thought we were kidding, but we weren't. It is actually, it feels a lot like the garrison. This expansion reminds me a lot of Warlords of Draenor, which sucks because I quit World of Warcraft during Warlords of Draenor. Now it's not as bad. It's not anywhere near as bad. but I'm sensing a lot of the same vibes of like loneliness and like I'm not even in an MMO anymore. One of the biggest reasons why Endwalker has felt pretty lonely and isolating in same ways that Warlords of Draenor felt to me all those years ago is the lack of an exploration zone, the lack of anything like Bajra or Eureka or Zadnor. Yeah. We just don't have that, and there's nothing added to the game that could even remotely replace that. And it's not even so much about like, oh, well, I just love farming fates in Bajra. I just love hunting down little items that has a tiny drop rate. And it's not really even so much about the specific things there was to do in Bajra. It's about the...
This fucking girl right here is currently giving me shit about dying in hardcore. Shut the fuck up. Are you in the chat? She's not here. She's tossing shade at me for dying in hardcore. Shut the fuck up. Fucking playing with a group like an absolute coward.
The vibe of Eureka and Bajra. It's about being in a zone filled with tons of other players that reminds you that you're in an MMO. That there's a lot of people playing the same game as you, and it's really exciting, and we're all happy to be there for different reasons. Like, you might be in Bajra because you're leveling, or because you're working on a relic, or because you're doing duels, or because you're collecting mounts, or because you're farming gil, or you're doing cluster farming. There's a ton of different reasons why all kinds of different people would be in these places. And you might meet people that you wouldn't have known otherwise. You might meet people that were strangers to you.
I don't disagree with anything she said so far.
This common purpose, and then you
really don't
meet more often, and that's how you make friends in the game. That's one of
it
the
also feels very normal for MMOs.
But with the content that they're releasing now, which is like solo stuff and small group stuff, you're usually going in there with people you know or alone. And it sucks because it's like, where else can you even show off your mount to other players in the game? Like, you can't do it in the city.
Show off my mount.
Bajra was the place to do that. It's the place where everyone is. It's the place that's happening that makes you feel like, oh, there's something cool going on and everybody else is doing it and I can't wait to be there with them. That's the heart and soul of it.
The mount thing is true,
and
though.
Without that, it just feels really, really empty, frankly. And I definitely feel like the lack of a place like that where everyone is, that feels like it's popping off. Like,
have they said they're not making one? Because didn't you guys say it usually comes with like a certain patch cycle that they usually release a zone like this? Have they confirmed they're just not making one for Endwalker? It usually comes out. The island is the replacement for it. Yeah, not really. Yeah, not really. The island doesn't do that. Yeah, the island does not do that. No, the island does not fit that role. Any stuff in Endwalker you blame FF16 for? I don't think that's fair. Like, it's up to Yoshi P to take on those challenges, but that doesn't mean one game should suffer. Like, if that's the case, if quality is going to drop, then that's not fair to the other players. I don't think so. I get the challenge and stuff, but yeah, that's not on the... I would go back to what I'd say about World of Warcraft. As a customer, that's not my problem. That's a you problem that shouldn't be allowed. And I don't think Yoshi P would see it that way either. I would like to think that anyway. She ever tried the RP venues? I don't know. Like, yeah, I think you need to clarify something here. In an MMO, there is always something to do. Always. There is. Regardless of how many hours you put into it, there is always something to do. Like, the only person I know who has ever, like, if we look at World of Warcraft, done seemingly everything was Annie. And that lasted all of 2 weeks. She managed to technically complete World of Warcraft up until a week later when the rest of the content came out, and she's still not done it all, right? I believe it was Annie was the only person who managed to, like, and I'm talking about the achievements, which track, like, everything in the game, and I think it was just Annie who managed to do it. And Annie had a 1 week grace period before Dragonflight launched and then filled the whole fucking thing again. So that's my point is, for nearly enough every person in existence, there's always something to do in MMO. But here's where the problem is. You have your favorite things. An MMO is a buffet, right? It's a buffet. There's nothing else to it. An MMO is a buffet. And Ian Hazakostas has some good points on this. And you will have, like any of us here, when you go to a buffet, is you will have the things that you want to eat. And they're there. And you'll eat them. And that's fine. But if the buffet is the only place you can eat at, because you're a one game Andy, or a one buffet Andy in this case, is that eventually you're going to have consumed the thing that you really like. And if you're just going to stay at that buffet, you start like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to have to start doing the things that I don't particularly like, or eating the things that I'm not a particularly big fan of. And you start working out from that middle point, right? You've got your favorite things, and then you start doing the things that, well, I like these things, but I wouldn't choose them, all the way down to the things that you don't enjoy. Because you're just trying to stay in that game, you're trying to stay and have fun, and you want to stay there. But ultimately, there's just so little left to consume that's actually stuff you want to do. And I've seen tens and tens of thousands of people doing this, like people who detest PvP, but still want to play the game. Are like, well, I'm going to try PvP now. It's like, you don't like PvP. It's like, yeah, but like, I need something to do. And this is what I'm doing now. Or I'm going to start doing archaeology, or I'm going to start doing fishing, or, you know, I'm going to go and get the legend. I'm going to go and get all the legendaries in the game. Right? Shit like that. I'm going to start farming Thunder Fury. Oh, now I'm going to start getting the shoulders from Garrosh. Do you want them? Not really, but it'd be nice to have that in my completionist set of having all those things. I'm going to now collect all the mounts that I possibly can. I'm now going to start collecting all the pets, but you don't like pet battles. No, but like, I don't have all the pets. Apparently some of the quests are pretty fun. You know that gymnastics you do in your brain? It's like, yeah, but like, I've heard that some of them are really fun to get. So I'm going to go and do those. Like, the storyline's probably pretty good. And now I've got like a lot of them, so I might as well get the rest of them. And you start going down this sort of like roller coaster road of like, oh, I'm going to just start like hoovering up all these bits of content. But if I had my choice, if I had the choice, I would never touch these things, because I would prefer it, like in my case, that you just make more raids. Like, you know, in that totally selfish point of view that you'll read a lot on forums, which are like, why are they making mythic raids? Why are they making savage raids? Only like X% of the player base gets to do them. What a waste of resources this is. And then those people are like, well, if you keep taking away what I like, there's nothing left but a disgusting buffet of things that I would never choose from. And I'm just not going to play your game anymore. And you keep taking away, and it doesn't work. So you have all these things in there to play. And so it's difficult. And Ian brought up a good point. Because one of the things that's bothered me for years is World of Warcraft does not have a living, breathing world. What happens in its world makes no sense compared to what's going on in its story, and hasn't done for a really long time. And so when I brought this up to her, I was like, you do know there's a massive disconnect between the story you're trying to tell in your game and the world we all play in. They're completely separate, independent things. And his point was, yeah, we know. But ultimately, I have to put this team, which is a finite team, yeah, $1 billion company, and everybody brings that up. But like, do I set all these people full-time employment to make a piece of content that people might visit once or twice, and maybe X% of people will love, but like most people are going to go once or twice? Or do we make a new raid or a new outdoor zone or something, which we're pretty sure like 90% of people are going to enjoy? Like, how do we divide those resources up? How do we make sure that we're not just throwing people at projects that nobody cares about, even though it's cool and it fills out the world? Ultimately, like, is anybody going to bother with this thing, or like bother with it outside of the main thing? And you can look at the MSQ that way. How many people actually play the MSQ twice? Not many, I would wager. Like, definitely some. Most people, a lot of people from what I see, live through it vicariously through other people, instead of like just replaying it over and over again. So you could argue in some fashions, despite MSQ being like the biggest draw to Final Fantasy XIV, in some players' perspective who don't like the MSQ, it's a waste of time for them. They skip through it. They just want to get on with endgame. They only care about savage raiding. They only care about X, Y, and Z. And therefore, the MSQ in their eyes, because you remember, it's always looked through a narcissistic, selfish lens, is like, this MSQ thing that you're investing all this time into is like just not fun. And it looks like you put so many resources into it. It's like, yeah, but 90% of the people love the MSQ. Like, they absolutely adore it. That's the whole reason people come to this game. Yeah, but I don't like it. So why are you spending like all these resources on it? I would rather have Heaven on High earlier. I would rather have the Savage Raid out earlier. Why are you delaying Savage Raiding a week for people who like the story? Like, story people can play anytime, right? What's the problem? They can New Game Plus it or whatever. Like, it's just not necessary. And all those views are very selfish. But the point is, it's, an MMO is supposed to be a big max buffet of things for people to enjoy. And if that buffet is not tempting, widespread, then yeah, people are just going to go somewhere else.
it might contribute to, or even be a self-fulfilling prophecy where you get it into your head, well, I barely see anyone else, and so this game is dead, right? Of course, that is going to be reinforced if you're not doing anything. You're not called to do anything where you can actually see tons of other players around. I've been finding myself happy to see lots of people standing around the Aetheryte. And that's about as far as it gets in me feeling like I'm in an MMO. And frankly, that's unacceptable. One of the reasons that we had those before and we don't now is because in the past, Eureka and Basha, these exploratory zones, they were tied in with the relic journey. And for whatever reason, not only did they choose to remove these zones from Endwalker completely, but they also removed the relic journey. There is no relic journey for Endwalker. You cannot say that turning in tombstones each time counts as a relic journey. So let me explain if you're new. In the past, in every other expansion of Final Fantasy XIV ever, the relic has been a very special weapon that has been a journey for you to get. Now, usually you complete it in stages, each stage becoming increasingly more cool looking, shiny. It transforms over time. And with each stage, you need to go grind some materials. You need to go, I don't know, farm fates, maybe do some dungeon or whatever to get the materials you need to upgrade it to the next stage. And so it's this long process. It's meant to cover the entire expansion, and it really is casual content. Because at the very, very end of it, very end of the expansion, then you have...
She's not saying... it's hard to get this point across, what she's trying to say. Yeah, you could argue that these are tedious grinds, and I've looked into them. But her overall point of what she's trying to say is something long-term that multiple players invest time into that keeps people playing. Right? It doesn't matter what that package is, but something that players generally want to do, like get a good weapon, right? And invest time into that keeps people online each day doing similar sorts of content. FF14 traditionally has been pretty good at this, like the way they do the dungeons so that any level can join in with any level. So you do get like endgame players and all those kind of things, is looking for some sort of gameplay loop that incentivizes you to go through stages and stuff like that. Now, typically in MMO, that is a grind in some respects, because that's how do you make it in an MMO that isn't just auto-consumed? It kind of needs to be a grind, right? That's like, how else are you going to do it? Unless you like time gate it every time, which also doesn't work because when it's time gated, people consume it all the day the time gate lifts, and then they don't do anything else. So you have this like surge and then just disappeared. What you're looking for is that even keel content. That's like, okay, I'm going to do this. Now, yeah, many people are like, yeah, I didn't like the relic grind. That's totally fine as well. But undeniably, stuff like that does give people something long-term to focus on where they do encounter other players and stuff like that. The form that takes varies massively. But it's not wrong that some even keel content instead of surges and dips is nice for a regular stream of players on a daily basis.
Weapon. And it's a sparkly weapon, and it shows that you had dedication and you had patience. So it's a great way for a casual player who maybe doesn't want to raid to get a really cool weapon that they can be proud of, that shows they were committed to this. And it's something to be proud of for sure. It always has been. But this is the first expansion where I have not heard shit from anybody about their relics, because the relics are in the game. The relics are still in the game for Endwalker. But to upgrade the relic this time, just turn in tombstones. And it's not even that many. In fact, most people, you can log in, and if you hadn't been spending tombstones, you have enough. And that's it. It's literally a tombstone.
I did get mine on day one.
There's no cool, like, there's no process really to get it anywhere. There's no journey. They just removed that completely. Why? Why did they do this? I do not understand. We have tombstone weapons already. Why do we need another worse tombstone weapon? I am truly baffled by this decision, by them to get rid of this thing that also served the very important purpose of keeping people engaged with the game a lot.
Yeah, this is going to be very dependent on how you play games, how this comes across. So, like me, I'm fine with there being no grind. I'm totally okay with it. I'm like, that's absolutely fine for me. Like, no problem at all. Love it. Totally fine. And the reason for that is I really try to play FF14 on a daily basis, right? Like, for me, totally fine. Totally fine. But that's not her point, right? Her point is there's nothing that's replaced that as something to do outside it. I believe that's her point, is that there's nothing to do to replace that feeling of having something to do. Like, if you enjoy playing, like, tons of other games, and, like, oh, we're going to play WoW Hardcore this week, and then we're going to play Starfield this week, and then the MSQ's coming, and then we're going to do the Guild Wars 2 expansion, right? Like I play, totally fine. I get my relic, all good, no hassle, no nothing. But nothing has replaced that for the FF14 players, is where she's coming from. Is like, okay, so you took away the relic, which was the standard thing that people did. Yeah, it was a tedious grind, whatever. But what's replaced it? We've got no Eureka, no Bosnia. We've got no relic grind. What's also replaced this is the day-to-day gameplay loop. I mean, we can ask the question, right? If there'll be some people here who only play FF14. What does your daily gameplay look like? What does your daily gameplay look like? No, I don't think you should. I don't think ever you should put the pressure on the player to be like, this is your fault because there's nothing to do in the game. I don't think that's fair at all. And that's where I was with WoW. It's like, I don't think that's really fair. But there is a point where you conclude, it's like, well, there's no way this game could serve up enough stuff for me to do every single day that I want to do. Getting back to what we talked about earlier, that I actually want to do. And move around. I mean, I feel very close to what Zeplas is saying here, because I did this in WoW for like 10 plus years. And God, I was bored. Like, for a lot of times, I was really bored. I was like, okay, I'm going to make another alt, I guess. Roulette, Island, Retainer, Saucer, Island, Roulette's Tool Grind, playing with mods. Oh. Yeah, I wouldn't. I guess my message here would be, don't focus on that she's saying, like, the relics are just tomestones now. The point is, there's nothing to replace it. What is that day-to-day that isn't, like, do the roulettes, get the experience, you know, and do that and, like, log out? Almost like you're giving yourself daily quests. What's your long-term project? What is that that's replaced it, that gives you something? And sure, it might be a grind, but ultimately you're playing your favorite game, and if you enjoy it, like, what is your long-term project to go on? Yeah, ultimates, which could definitely, I'm sure we could all agree and not pretend that grinding ultimates or progging ultimates for a really long period of time can be brain melting, as we've seen certainly with Top and the amount of dead teams. I mean, still, most of this comes back to the social element for it to me, to do that. I know 48 capped characters in BFA because I was one game Andying. After that, I had about 6 capped in Shadowlands, only 3 in Dragonflight, then I quit. And look at me, like, I had 12, I've had every single class in World of Warcraft capped and mostly geared since Cataclysm. So that's Cata, WoD, Legion, BFA, and in Shadowlands. I did every single character and geared most of them outside of Shadowlands. And in Dragonflight, I have 1 capped character. And I'm happier than ever. But it took, like, an emotional breakdown for me to get there. Do you know what I mean? It took an emotional breakdown for me to fucking reach that point where I was like, I have 1 capped character, and I'm super, super happy. And when people ask me about World of Warcraft, I'm like, it's great. It's really good. It's good. I have a really good time. Every time I play WoW, I have a really, really good time. And then when I start having a weaker time, I just log out. Yeah, my warrior. When I have a weaker time, I'm done. I move out, and I'll come back when there's more stuff. And I absolutely have the best time doing that. It's so good, so good. I'm not hunting. I guess the point is that it's simplest if we break it all down outside of the specifics of relics, tomestones, legendaries, whatever you want to call them, gear score. Is I'm not hunting for something to do. Right? When you break it all down to its core component, am I looking for things to do? And that's it. That's the be all and end all of it. Am I looking for things to do that are fun and not repetitive, right? Like that I mean, I want to do. No, if you're not using clickbait on YouTube, you're kind of being an idiot. Honestly, it's what gets people to video. Would you guys have asked me to look at this video without that title? Probably not. Right?
like it gave you something to do between patches. For example, I think it was at the end of Stormblood where there was a big content drought, like a giant one.
Not for me.
And
Giga Chad.
maybe, I'm pretty sure it was end of Stormblood. And somebody had asked Yoshi P, what do we do? Waiting. It's such a long drought. What do we do? Waiting for the next expansion. And he said, oh, just get every relic weapon. And people were kind of mad at him at the time because it was kind of a cop-out answer, but it was a valid answer because getting each one was time
What was
consuming.
longer? I'm curious. There's a lot of good points being brought up by Zeplas here. What's longer? Is it the WoD content drought or the Stormblood content drought? WoD was what, 13 months? No, MOP. I'm thinking of MOP. MOP was 13 months, right? 13 months without a patch. MOP was 15, something like that. Something crazy. Yeah, MOP was... or Guild Wars 2. Oh, Shadowlands might have been longer, actually. Yeah, there was a... Shadowlands had a big one, right? Siege of Orgrimmar was about 15 months, I think. Or 13 to 15 months. I think it might be Shadowlands took the crown. I think Shadowlands might have taken the crown. It was something ridiculous. I know on average, like, people started doing workouts of the cost per expansion for paying for nothing. Yeah. World of Warcraft, we went Hellfire Citadel was 2 years without a patch. Yeah, it was brutal. 18 months of Hellfire Citadel. So Hellfire Citadel was 18 months. Yeah, this is brutal, dude. Absolutely brutal. Like, if you're a one-game Andy, I know that term is like sounds kind of derogatory, but you get what it means, right? Is that your main focus is primarily in one game. And you have to go through like 18 months or even a year of just no updates to the game. And you really just don't want to play anything else. Fucking miserable. Absolutely miserable. FF's not hit that by any means.
Really the purpose that it served in the past was to keep you busy waiting for the content. But without that, it's almost like they deliberately are now choosing to not have you play the game between the patches. This is the first expansion in all my years of playing FXAV that...
I think that's exactly what they're doing. Because I think that's how most of the player base plays. And I think they're okay with it. Yeah, I think that is the point. And I can totally see why that's annoying if you lean more to one game, right? But I think... You know what this reminds me of a little bit? The raiding focus of the serious raiders in Guild Wars 2. And them getting really angry at me and saying, like, it's just not the focus of the game. As much as you want it and you crave it and things like that, like... It's just not the focus of the game. And the Raiders got really pissed at me for saying that. But, like, it's just not the focus of what, like, the huge portion of your players are doing. Now, I don't agree that it should be removed, though. Going back to that buffet thing, is like there should be something there for them. Again, it's not a black and white decision-making process. I do think, certainly after Yoshi P's statements about Final Fantasy 16, he's like he was actively reducing the loot drops, or increasing the loot drops. So people could stop playing FF14 to go and play FF16. You know, that's where I'm getting that from, is kind of the focus is like, yeah, we're totally okay with you guys going away and coming back. But if you're a one gamer, or like this is your favorite game, that's not a good message to receive, right? That's just bad news all around. It's like, well, I really don't want that. Can you put something in for us that don't want to go and play other games? I mean, I think that's a fair request. I really do. Okay. You're designing the games to be seasonal. I get it. Like, it's based around MSQ launches or some big patch update or whatever, or raid releases. But for those of us who do want to stay and play every day, can we have something like a Bosnia or a Eureka or whatever, just a relic grind even, you know, like to work on? I think that's completely fine. It's not a healthy request. I think it is. What's unhealthy about that? I don't think that's unhealthy. It's to say this is my favorite game and I'm paying for it or whatever. What's unhealthy about that? Is that okay to add a grind soul for the sake of grind? Yeah. In an MMO? Absolutely. 100%. Oh yeah. I don't see a problem with that. Optional grinds are good. It's when it becomes a mandatory grind. That's where that's the line that you draw. An optional grind for cosmetic weapons, essentially, and relics and things like that is totally fine. Totally fine. It's only unhealthy when it turns into Torghast. It's like you have no fucking choice but to take part in this content. That's when it's unhealthy. That's when it crosses the line. It's like, if you want to enjoy other parts of this game, you have to go through here. You've got to walk down that road. But having optional grinds that are totally at the will of the player with some fun elements, and that's why I rated Bosnia as one of the best things I ever saw in FF14, because it did so much right. It encouraged the player base to get close, and it was optional. It was totally good. Yeah, like, is it any different than grinding all the mounts and stuff? I absolutely agree it's a healthy thing for them. MMOs particularly, which are designed from the ground up for day-to-day gameplay. Yeah, I think that's totally healthy. Do you think it's bad that they decided to add Island Sanctuary and skip Bosnia for expansion? Yeah. I didn't know that they were actively saying the Island Sanctuary is a replacement for, like, Bosnia or Eureka, because, yeah, I don't agree with that at all. Like, that's not what the Island Sanctuary is about. One, the Island Sanctuary is a solo experience. Yes, you can visit other islands and shit, but it's a solo experience. And it's not nowhere near as fun as, like, I don't know, I've got a very biased view of Bosnia, because I did it with you guys, and we rolled across the plains in tanks and stuff. Well, I wasn't in a tank. And, like, had Red Alert music playing and shit like that. Like, we went to war. Like, we you know, we spawned everything. Like, we made it into a really, really ridiculously fun experience. But, like, it's not like I wasn't blind to the biased view I had, but also the core elements of what made up Bosnia made a lot of sense to me from a solo perspective as well. And how it moved people to encourage each other, play together, which is something FF14 does better than any other MMO in the world, is encourage that social togetherness, is what I'd call, through engineered social togetherness through its gameplay. And the Island Sanctuary certainly doesn't do that. And was never designed to do that, I don't think. Yeah. Criterions as well, it just took too much resources. Yeah, so Endwalker, okay, so let's come at this from a different angle. Endwalker has dropped some content, but it has also introduced new forms of content. Right? It's not like they've produced less. I think we could probably look at that in a general sense. It's not like they've made less content. They've made different styles of content, which are maybe not resonating with some of the old school players as much as they did. So the Island Sanctuary is a big piece of content, right? It is. Like, it's a huge thing. It is. The Island Sanctuary is new. The Criterion's new. We got Crystalline Conflicts, which is an extension of PvP, but yeah, new. You know, those kind of things. We got a Deep Dungeon, but that's not. I mean, it is new, kind of, but it's an enhancement on a previous system that already existed. If there was a new Bosnia zone, you wouldn't say that was brand new. It's not a brand new system that was added to the game, right? It was a repackaged version of an older system that's working there. A big thing, stealing resources. I don't think they had a resource theft. Doesn't seem that way to me. They just made different things this time around, but none of them were multiplayer focused, long-term play. Is that the category we would put it in? Multiplayer focused, long-term play. Which would be your Bosnias, Eurekas. They're designed for zones filled with players to be working together in some form together. The Island Sanctuary doesn't work that way. Criterions don't work that way. Yeah, large group, like massively multiplayer. All right, we can go that route. No grind content. Yeah, I think that's fair. So they redistributed their resources into a different way. How much resource it takes to update every gear for every race? Depends on how the skeleton structure works internally. I've spoken to some people that, like, usually with that stuff, they have a system that actually automatically does that, like an algorithm that fixes it. And then there's like 5 items that need like massive readjustments for some fucking reason. That changes how they work. Like, it's all based on the skeleton. The problem is that I guess that Bosnia was so good at being what it was, MMO part of the MMO, they're not following with a similar. I would be lying to say I wasn't looking forward to the next Bosnia, because Eureka I really didn't like. Bosnia I thought was exceptional. What they were going to do next, what their iteration on that, I was really excited for. And I thought, certainly from not only like a personal point of view, but a stream point of view, I thought we would have had a ton of fun with that. I thought, like, as a stream, if we got like an open zone where we could crawl across its fucking ground and dirt, I thought we would have an absolute blast, especially as it's like new and we all want it and like things like that. Would have been really sick. I thought we were going to have the sickest time, probably like 3 weeks of us just like hardcoring it. Just have everybody getting where they're going to be, cheering on. I am sad it's not here. Island Sanctuary was fun, but I mean, you guys know as well as anybody, is I grinded the shit out of the first Island Sanctuary. I haven't given a shit about the update since, because it was kind of more of the same. So I did it. I farmed all those little fucking plants and rocks, and I got my level 10 or whatever the fuck it was. And I got all my animals. I named them all, had a ton of fun with it. And then all the updates to it, I'm like, nah, not really. Not really. Like, when it came to managing all the resources and replanting all the potatoes, when it turned into like a kind of a grind, I guess, is when I turned away, which is my fucking raison d'etre at this point. When it turns into a grind of maintenance mode, I'm not interested at that point. That's when I drift out. It's like, I would rather play something else. Than grind out potato farming or whatever. There's just too many other things going on.
I don't even know what my relic looks like.
Yeah, neither do I.
And my friends
no idea.
who normally send me screenshots of, look, I just got the new relic for my job. And,
Mine's a
I just
Moogle,
got
I
another relic. It's usually a thing we are excited to share because it's a big deal. It's like a big milestone.
Glam is lame.
That you get your relic and you upgrade it because it's hard to do.
Joking.
Nobody I know is even getting a relic. Nobody's even going after it now because it's not cool. Because it's easy to get. It has no value because it's just anyone can get it. So what does it mean? What does it say? Why would they remove this?
Item levels, baby.
It just feels like laziness, frankly.
No, I disagree with that.
Maybe they didn't even want to put it at all, but they felt like they had to, and they put the lowest amount of effort into it as possible. They really phoned it in, and frankly, it's shameful because this is not what the relic is meant to be. It is meant to be something to keep you busy for a little longer, but it also feels like it's a deliberate choice that they do not want people even logging in that much. They just don't want you to feel like you need to log in at all. It's crazy. Now, the next thing that it pains me to say, because I am an MSQ Andy. I live for the main story quest of FXFE, and that will never change.
Skip.
But I have never been more disappointed with the main story quest than I have in
that's not fair.
Expansions. Patches. Now, I loved 6.0. I thought it was great. But the patches have definitely left a lot to be desired. And I was really patient and forgiving for the first couple of major patches. I thought, well, you know, they're setting up for something else and we're just getting ready to pivot, and there's meant to be a bit of a lull between what's going into the next thing and blah, 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 blah. But looking back, I feel like I was just kind of making excuses. And I don't want to say that all of the story and every moment in the whole story was terrible. No, because there were good moments. There was a lot of really nice moments, like the slice of life moments I thought were some of the better
she did
parts.
some editing in the video.
Especially Estinian doing the push-ups.
Oh, get
really
fucked.
Nice. But I feel like it is shameful and obvious that they, instead of making the trial series side series like we have had with Sorrow of Wirlit or Four Lords in the past, they instead chose to make it the main story quest. They made the trial series the main story quest. We don't have a trial series. We do not have a side series, a story of the trial bosses, because they have just put it right into the main story quest. So that's less content. Not only is it less story content overall for us, but it's way less interesting. Because as soon as we were aware that there were these archfiends at the very beginning,
I'm fine with either, honestly.
We knew exactly what was going to happen. Some people are saying, oh, well, it's just because 6.0 big arc ended, and then we got a new arc starting in Dawn Trail, and so this is just in
that'll be a
so you can't
taste
expect
thing.
anything good.
Well,
that's honestly bullshit, because
like that Stormblood side quest, I really didn't care
being constrained in
about.
time to tell the story
It was okay.
usually means that it's going to be easier to tell a good story if you spend enough time really plotting that out and considering it. Like, that's one of the major reasons why I often say Shadowbringers was such a solid story expansion, because they needed to tell the entire story of a planet from beginning, middle,
I like
and
the
end.
bosses.
Within the
I'm a
course of
raider.
one
I like the
expansion.
bosses.
So there's all these new people
if
you
the
meet.
story's
There's
good,
this huge
awesome.
climax, and they need to wrap it all up before you go. And this made it really satisfying as its own package. So sometimes constraining the story is really, really good because you can get all the juice in better. But
I don't think it's
like...
the chat getting triggered. It's just that I think we all agree that we care deeply, at least most of us here, about the FF14 story. Like a lot. Like more than any other game. And it should be and is held to a much higher standard than we would apply to any other MMO. Like I could say the Guild Wars 2 stories, like, pretty good. Well, that doesn't even put it in the same sport as Final Fantasy 14's. Like, it's good for a game of wiffle ball. Whereas, like, FF14, I consider to be the major fucking baseball league or whatever it's called. Like, you know what I mean? It's like World of Warcraft. Dragonflight's story is pretty good. But it's still fucking kids playing rounders instead of the MLB. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not up there. And this is a weird time for 14 because they're restarting the story. Like, there was always going to be conflict in terms of the MSQ because they're restarting it. And I don't think, if everything that we've done since the actual Endwalker conclusion of the original story and moving into Golbez and stuff like that is really all for nothing except here's Zero, then I totally agree that it's a waste of time. Because right now, I don't see how it plays into Dawn Trail in any way. But I do have faith that it does in some way. I have that faith. I'm paying attention to the details that are happening in the story right now. That it's going to, in some way, be important later on as to what's going on. Like, I have faith in the story writing, and if it doesn't, I do think I agree with Zeplas on this. Like, it's just unnecessary to have, 4 patches or whatever that are just kind of going nowhere, and it's gonna hard stop. Well, not hard stop. Probably the last patch will be something indicating something in Dawn Trail. But so far, even things that I felt insignificant have paid off at some point in the future in a big way. I mean, I said this from the start, is I kind of look at it Realm Reborn as it was like introducing these characters, giving a little backstory. Like, I don't think Nanamo's payoff with Raban works without a Realm Reborn all those years ago. Like, that massive change in Nanamo to where she became later on at the top of that tower where she's telling Raban that she's fucking in charge and she's still small, but like she's grown and she's done this, compared to that stupid fucking potato that walks in sat on the shoulder of this giant in a Realm Reborn. Like, that's your first introduction to Nanamo, is as a parrot on Raban's shoulder, right? I don't think that pays off as much without having that imagery in my head of, like, this is a character that, like, I literally laughed hysterically at. I think if we go back to the clip in A Realm Reborn, and now I see this moment, and I'm like, I'm almost in tears over this, over where they are. And it needs all that stuff to get there. So that's where my faith is placed with what we're currently doing in Endwalker. But obviously, like, fighting Zeramis and being, like, winning like, really quickly is really weird. Yeah, I agree with you, Jen. Like, I am totally there and on board that I have faith that this isn't just going to be like, oh, okay, and this are the 4 Lords and Golbez, Zeramis is all done. Here's Zero. And let's have a patch at the end, which is like, okay, I'm going to Dawn Trail. And we'll never reference those things ever again. We won't have to go back to who those 4 Lords were. We've got all those memories of who they were and what they were doing. Like, that's how I feel about it.
They really took a lazy path.
It's going to take time.
Frank. And
it's going to take a lot of time.
Oh, well, won't it be so convenient for us to just
hopefully
do callbacks to huge story moments in FF4, try to recreate those? And a lot of times it felt forced, and it felt like we're just artificially trying to recreate this moment from FF4, and I found that to be very frustrating. And
I didn't get that vibe.
instead of having a side story series like Sorrow of Wirlet, which
we don't
yes,
know
I
if she's
that's a
wrong is the
tough
point.
act to
We
follow.
don't know.
We'll just make that the main story quest instead. That has sucked. The story has gotten so predictable that in the previous live letter, they even told us who the next boss was going to be because they know that we know. And they did it for the last one too. Usually it's like a big secret, like, ooh, we can't even tell you who the new trial boss is going to be because it's going to be this huge story moment. But that really hasn't happened this time. And it sucks. So, Sorrow of Wirlet was absolutely amazing. I cried at the end. That's the Shadowbringers trial story series. And honestly, it feels like
to me they bundled that into the
really easy way out with the main
line.
story quests for these.
You guys get that vibe? Like they went the same. I'm not just saying because Wirlet came back up, but they like took the story element that used to be in the trial series, and they like split it all into different pieces. That's what Endwalker looks like to me. It's like, okay, we're taking away the relic grind, but we put the Island Sanctuary in. We're going to do Criterion dungeons. We're taking away the trial stuff, but we're going to keep the story element, but we're going to put the story element over into Taru's quest line. And the trials are now actually going to be part of the MSQ, but that extra story content you got is now going to be over here. Like they just like disconnected it and rearranged it in different ways, which you can see is coming across like weird in some ways. But I don't personally feel like we got less content. I feel it was all divided and sliced into different areas. And Omega, yeah, like they just like took what the way it was and then rearranged it into different routes and paths, which can always be jarring for sure.
Patches. The better parts were slice of life stuff. Zero being a character who I like, and is generally pretty well received.
Sussy as fuck.
And
sussy as fuck.
The moments getting to know and sort of chill out with the Scions has been some of the brighter points. So that gives me hope for Dawn Trail.
Stop showing this like fucking scene. Do you have this on a macro?
But, God, it has felt
thirsty
stretched
cow.
out,
What
and
the
it's felt
fuck
like
is
a
going
filler,
on?
and that has not been fun. That has not really been very engaging for me. Now, the next thing. I know, this
thirst
is rough,
or what?
man. The next thing. Island Sanctuary. I literally do not know a single person that is excited and happy with how Island Sanctuary turned out. In fact, even when it first came out, I remember everybody was kind of shocked that like, oh, because we thought, oh, we're going to go there and it's going to be this relaxing island getaway vacation. And we get there and it's a fucking management sim like spreadsheet thing where you need to
only by choice. This
work
is like
schedules
Raven
to all
did
the
this.
little
I didn't do it
robots,
this way.
and it's just like, what?
I was pure.
The general reaction was, wait, we're here to work? This isn't what I expected at all.
I didn't do it this
You're there
way.
by yourself. There's really no reason to
There
go
were
to
a lot of
someone
fucking
else's
people who did this, like pure spreadsheet the fuck out of it.
MMO
gamers.
The Garrison
Classic.
of FXAV. Only, honestly, less fun than the Garrison was. It's less interesting
I
than
don't
the
know.
Garrison.
When those animals were getting away, I had a good time.
You level up for several hours, and then when you're done, you can fill out the spreadsheet for your workshop. And you can have that done in 15 minutes once a week. And then
I had fun with it.
If you're really into it.
I never went back to it, though.
That's as much time as it's really going to take.
As I said.
But you don't...
I had fun with
really
it, but I never went back
reason
to
to
it.
do it once you have the mounts and like outfits and stuff that you wanted. It doesn't affect the game at all. It really doesn't affect anything else. So there's no reason to go to anyone else's sanctuary.
Yeah.
And probably
fuckers. There's no reason to go to anyone else's sanctuary. Okay? Listen to the lady. There's no reason to go to anyone else's sanctuary, you bunch of fucking trogs.
the best thing that they did for it was add it so you could put outdoor furnishings there. So, I mean, that was okay, but that's kind of not what it was meant to do. Because we have housing. Not everyone does, so that's why this is good, but...
It was never meant to be housing.
As
very clear on
replayable
that.
content, it's just not it. The Pandemonium raid story was better than the main story quest. There was a couple weird champ raids here and there, but by and large, I've
raid
enjoyed
story
it.
was really...
and that's
Honestly, the
thing.
Alliance raid story is fucking awesome. Right? I'm fucking really excited for the Alliance raid story. I fucking love it. When Graha rocks up with his piano, I'm like, this is fucking baller as fuck. We get massive tits all the time. What more is the you want? You know what I mean? We get Graha, we get Gods, we get Booba. I'm totally down. Fucking well good. Everything the body needs right there.
I'm probably enjoying most in the game right now. I don't think it compares to Eden, but it's still solid and fine. It's good. It's good.
It lacks coffee biscuits, which I'm fine
we could
with.
talk about the 2-minute meta all day, but this really, no, we're not going to do that right now.
You in an airport?
I don't even want to get into it right now because it's a whole can of worms, and it's not going away anytime soon.
Is that a plane?
Dungeon is okay. It's not great for leveling, unfortunately, which is one of the main reasons that people do Deep Dungeon over and over, for longevity. For replayability, you might notice a trend here where just the replayability is not a thing. It also feels like they didn't add enough things that were fresh and new to Deep Dungeon.
The 2-minute meta is everybody's cooldowns falling into a 2-minute blast window.
Some of the best potential for content in the game that has replayability and longevity.
So you line everything up for massive damage bursts. And if you don't fall into that window, and somebody else does who plays a similar job, like tanks were having a problem with it.
I don't even know what. Make it more of a roguelite. I wish they would just be a little bit more creative with it. Because right now I just don't know anyone that's interested in it. Leveling up at it, your ether pool armor is really a pain in the ass, and it feels like it's not worth it because it doesn't really affect anything. The rewards aren't really there to incentivize people to do it too. But in terms of content that has come out in this expansion, I'd say Deep Dungeon is all right. Like it's not that bad. It's one of the better ones. This is the most tragic case though, Variant and Criterion, because the content is good. Everybody agrees the content is good.
Don't do it, chat.
The fights are well designed. It's innovative. It's fresh. It's like, oh, you got to think about how you're going to pull the mobs around, and that has been a breath of fresh air, that they have tried to do something new and different. But it's like they take half measures with innovation. They're afraid to risk too much, change up the formula too much. It seems like they were terrified to add anything into Criterion, that like any kind of new item that you could get through it, anything that might screw up the strict itemization schedule that they have.
Again, fine for me.
Certain types of items drop from the alliance tree, and then certain types of items drop from the dungeon, and it has to be the specific item level, and they don't want to change it at all. They don't want to give you anything that's going to drop anywhere else that's going to be different. And I think they're really crippling their game by not providing, if they're not going to do the gear rewards from this stuff, I don't know, like find something else to make people go do. I don't know, maybe related to a relic, but they chose to take that out of the game this time too. So there's just no reward. There's no reward that anyone cares about in Criterion. Yes, there's like this mount, but you can buy that with guild. So it kind of doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't mean that you've cleared it. It doesn't mean much. It's a shame. In all my years of playing, I've never seen brand new piece of content die so fast. Brand new content, and in less than a week, no one cared. In fact, I remember the day that Variant and Criterion stuff came out the first time, the Ass Savage, and I had, taken my time logging in that day, and when I logged in, I saw my friend had already got the Silky mount from the Variant dungeon, from clearing all 12 paths of the Variant without even really trying. And so they were actually done with Variant before I could even log in the same day that it came out. There's no reason to return. You can be done with it.
Is she talking about us? Because I messaged her that day. I messaged her a picture of us on the mountains. I don't know if she is, but I'm pretty sure I messaged her saying, like, we already had you did this. It might be me. I can't remember. Oh, God. No, I'm not scrolling all that way, but I definitely messaged her because she wasn't online yet, and I sent her a picture of us all on the mounts. It was good fun.
In a couple of hours.
Look at the pain in her eyes.
Unacceptable in an MMO where you want people to be playing together. But I guess maybe they don't. Maybe they just don't want that anymore. I don't know. The PvP changes and addition of Crystalline Conflict is one of the more positive things that I think have happened in this expansion. But these series, Momstones rewards, the PvP rewards, that was meant to keep people engaged
post-recording Zeplas at the wrong volume.
Long term, You can
Amateur
knock it all
hour.
out in a week or two if you try. So people that do casual, I mean, that still pops fairly often.
Oh, it's a different video.
But if you've done casual, it can get kind of boring. Ranked is really where the fun is, in my opinion. And ranked players, they do this in the first couple weeks, and then they are gone. There's no further incentive to do it anymore.
They're not gone. They're
that.
just invading my tournament.
So yeah, anytime
and
I
crushing
complain about
everybody.
it, people just say, "Oh well, if you're playing
Gamers.
FXIV for the PvP, you're playing the wrong game." And I'm really tired of this defeatist attitude, frankly. There's also people who do not want the game to ask you to do more. Let me tell you something. You don't need the game to not have stuff in it for you to walk away when you're tired. You can just walk away when you're tired. Unfortunately, the FF14 community has developed a little bit of a reputation for not being able to take criticism at all. And this is really damaging to the game as well.
That's outrageous.
You need to be able to discuss when things don't feel right. They don't feel as good as they used to be. And I almost feel like people want to say that they're burnt out because it's easier for others to accept than for them to say, the content this time wasn't fun enough for me. The content didn't make me want to play. The content wasn't something I was excited to do. It's almost like that in itself is a taboo for some people to say. And it's easier for them to accept, well, maybe it's on me. It's just I'm personally tired of the game.
Is you.
And I think in a lot of
Disgust
cases,
me, you
maybe
hater.
that's not true.
What a hater.
Because I've never seen this many people claim to be burnt out. And I think it actually has a lot to do with the content more than people are willing to admit. And I'm tired of hearing people say, whenever we bring up these complaints or any kind of criticism about the game and why I want to be able to play it more, but I can't. I'm tired of hearing people say, well, we don't want this to be a game where it's just this huge grind where you need 30 hours a week to stay up to date. No one is saying that. Stop jumping to this huge extreme conclusion. I hate that people keep doing this. It's driving me crazy. Like, just because I say that I would like a very the lightest possible pressure to please maybe log in today or this month, that doesn't mean I want to go full balls to the wall, Shadowlands, renowned grinds. I don't want that. No one wants that. No one's asking for that. So stop saying that. What we are saying is that we want to play together. We want to feel like the game is an exciting place to be, at least sometimes, at least for maybe 1-2 weeks after the major patch came out. Okay? I don't want to see people falling off and saying they're bored like a week after patch. This is not normal. Okay, I've been around playing this game for long enough to know what's normal and what isn't, and this isn't. I'm seeing really unhealthy signs right now, and I think this lack of attention to the game from the devs, that's really what it seems like. It seems like laziness, and this hesitation to criticize the game at all on behalf of the player base is going to kill the game eventually. Now, I said I don't want to be a doomer, and I don't think the game is dying, but these are things that we need to nip in the bud before they get out of hand.
And a doomer.
You need to be able to admit whenever the content itself is just worse. It's that simple. We're not comfortable with that in this community because usually every expansion is like the goose laying the golden egg. It's usually pretty damn good. And I'm willing to accept that it's impossible for any game to keep your attention nonstop all the time. That's not what we're asking for either. But what I do want is to not see most of my friends say things like, well, I guess I'll just come back in Dawn Trail. Now, some people are saying, oh, well, it's just because they were so busy.
Some people might not even play Dawn Trail release.
I don't know. Cut some corners here. I don't know if that's true, and frankly, I don't care. Because the fact is, a lot of people are saying it. And if a lot of people feel that way, then it's unacceptable. Maybe Yoshi P's attention has been divided. I mean, he is on the board of directors. He tried to get off it, and they won't let him for some reason. He had been working on FF16, and he's trying to do directors.
Wait, what was that? You didn't leave it open enough.
He had to cut some corners here. I don't know if that's true, and frankly, I don't care. Because the fact is, a lot of people are saying it. And if a lot of people feel that way, then it's unacceptable. Maybe Yoshi P's attention has been divided. I mean, he is on the board of directors. He tried to get off it, and they won't let him for some reason.
There's a quote from Yoshi P. Godlike. He's in the board of directors at Squeenix, but seems to really dislike it. Mention this Dutch article, NRC Handelsblad. Here's the translation. Yoshida's been part of the board of directors since the 14th game has been successful, which he doesn't like as much. I recently tried to quit that work, but the company didn't agree with it. I don't want to be on the board. It's much more fun just to make games. Yeah. Being in the bureaucracy sucks.
You had been working on FF16 and he's trying to do direct producer of FF14. I just feel like it's too much. They're working this man too damn hard. And he needs to stop doing everything else.
He'll be fine. Give him a Red Bull and a cigarette. He's good to go.
Focus on FF14. Give it his full, undivided attention for Dawntrail.
Like a wind-up crack.
I don't ever want to hear anybody saying again, making excuses for them as to why the content seems worse this time around. The main point I hope I can really get across to you in this video is that this isn't black and white. It shouldn't be a choice between so much pressure to log in that there's like FOMO even. That you have to log in right now or you're missing out. There's somewhere better to be between that and we're not asking you to do anything. So why do you care? And I guess you need to think of your own reason to care. And most people don't because they're constantly being barraged on all sides by a million other games and are working very hard to give them lots of reasons to care about logging into those other games.
Temporarily, though.
And people have a limited amount of time. And I'm sorry to say, but FXV needs to fight a little harder for people's time and not take it for granted that people will just always come back and always play. And like, yes, maybe they will for the expansions. But
That's
what
a
about
fair
the rest
point.
Of the time? One
That's
thing
a
I
fair
would say
point.
also, as
Can't rest on your laurels ever.
DSR was probably the best experience I've ever had in
That's
gaming.
very, very true.
During DSR, the Ultimate Raid that came out.
Yeah, so like I don't disagree. I disagree with part of the conclusions. I don't think it was laziness. I think they did a lot of. Let me move that forward because that's not a good look.
was
okay. I don't. I agree with the overall sentiment. I think the overall sentiment is that you can't rest on your laurels, and you can't. I think it is a dangerous game to play to make an MMO that is specifically designed, or like, hey, most of our player base goes and comes back. Not everybody, obviously, but most goes and comes back. So let's just build the game around that. You can't do that. You need the player base to exist all the time when people log in and log out. And again, we go back to the social circles we talked about earlier. If they get disrupted too heavily, then they're not going to reappear. They will just disappear. Ultimately, over time, they'll bleed away. And it's what happened with World of Warcraft, right? It does take like 5 years, though, from what I can see, with an MMO to actually reach the point where it's at critical mass. So recognizing the problems early is a good thing. Like, it's a good thing. It's certainly, I would obviously listen to seasoned players. I'm not a seasoned player of FF14. And I don't know if her opinion is widespread amongst like the seasoned vets who've played like day in, day out for a really long time. But you should pay attention as like, hey, this is not okay. Like, we're missing that day-to-day thing, that project, that stuff I could log in and play. And then, because there's a knock-on effect, certainly in current day, there's a knock-on effect. If your streamers stop playing and they're doing other things, and that has a knock-on effect on the player base in certain ways, because those people who like want to play alongside don't play anymore, and they might play what else they're doing. You know, if Zeplas wants to log in and stream Final Fantasy 14, and she's one of the more prominent names in Final Fantasy 14. And Arthur's has been through this as well recently, I believe. Arthur's has been quite outspoken. It's like, I haven't got shit to do in FF14. He's been playing World of Warcraft and stuff like that. Like, there's just nothing for me to do. And so that you know, there'll be a portion of those player base that goes away, and that spreads because the portion of those players also have friends in game. And it filters, right? It filters down. It does. And I'm not saying streamers are at the top, but that's part of the example, right? So if that's happening over there, then it's going to filter down. And they'll be listening to conversations like, well, there's just nothing to do. And I wish there was something to do, but there is nothing to do. What we can't do is what I was thinking with, say, the next Bosnia is like, okay, we're going to set up like a stream week for this. We're going to have a sick time. We're going to let everybody know, hey, we're going to smash this new content out together. We're going to ride across in tanks or whatever. And we're going to have a really sick time in the game. And it's just not happening. Right? It's not happening. We can't do that with Island Sanctuaries. Like, we did stream and do the Island Sanctuary, but like, it wasn't a joint effort. It wasn't a community effort. It was more people comparing what level they got to. It wasn't the same experience. And therefore, you're going off and looking at other things. And normal players are going to do that the same way as well, right? The players that aren't in the public eye are going to do the exact same thing. Are going to be looking for other things to do. Their friends are going to stop playing. Like, it does break down. So recognizing these issues early is a very, very good thing, if the devs pay attention to it. Now, I can only look at our early red alerts that we were throwing about Shadowlands, you know, which were loud. I could say, I'm not going to mention who I spoke to, but during ExileCon, let's just say some very, very important people at Grinding Gear Games sat me down in a room, which was away from the crowd, and talked to me specifically about what happened with Shadowlands. And it was a really interesting discussion from the people who have a lot of influence in the gaming industry, because it wasn't just Grinding Gear Games who was in that conversation, to talk about the more nuanced aspects of what I believed caused the problems in Shadowlands. And it came out of nowhere, because I can give you context for this. It wasn't like an organized meeting, right? I want to give you some context for this. It wasn't like, it was like, Mike, can you be in this meeting with us at 2 p.m.? It wasn't that. I had 2 places to be that day, and they had a place where only the staff were allowed and content creators to meet up before you had to be at certain locations. Okay. So it was a place where it's like, hey, instead of us having to go around this arena and find you, could you be here at like 15 minutes before? And that way we'll know where to come and find you and get you organized so you can go into makeup and make all this stuff done and blah, blah, blah before we put you on camera or whatever. So I was in there, and suddenly somebody started talking to me who I didn't know who they were. And this is not the first time this has happened. You guys will all recall when I accidentally told a man came to talk to me and asked me what I thought about BlizzCon last year, and I told him it was a complete fucking disaster, and turned out to be the CEO of Blizzard Asia. But, like, it turned out fine because I told him the truth and I didn't back down after he revealed that, and he ended up giving me his business card, should I have anything to do in Asia. But being polite, needless to say. No, it wasn't a whoops. Like, he appreciated it because people don't often tell those people the truth from a content creator side. Because, you know, if that guy would have come and said, hi, I'm the head of, I'm the CEO of Blizzard Asia, then probably I would have taken a different tone with him at first. But considering I'd already walked down this road, I wasn't going to change direction and be like, oh, no, what I meant to say was, no, I was like, yeah, like, you fucked up last year massively. Your Diablo Immortal reveal was fucking comedy. You shit all over the players. Like, we went down that road and were very blunt about it. And ultimately, he invited me to meet some other people, like the head of esports at the time for Overwatch. This was back when Overwatch was not Overwatch 2. Blah, blah, blah. Either way, so I was going to this room. But as I was on my way to this room, I was like doing a lot of photographs and stuff, and meeting people. And then when I got in the room, somebody came and spoke to me, and I didn't know who they were. They were like, hey, I know you. You're PreachGaming, right? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, can I ask you a couple of questions? And I was like, sure. And then he specifically started asking about Shadowlands. And then 2 more people came over. And they were like, who's this guy? Because they wanted to talk to the other guy. And it's like, this is Preach, who did the do you remember World of Warcraft Shadowlands expansion? And they were like, oh, you're that guy. It's like, I'm that guy? And they're like, yeah, you're that guy who, like, was in the paper and the news reports about Shadowlands, right? And then they were like, so did you have contact with Blizzard before, like, it got to that? Or was it like a rage thread and stuff? And I was like, no, we were talking. Like, I had interviews with them, and I spoke with the director and stuff like that. And they were like, can we ask you a few questions? Because we're curious about something. Now, I genuinely believe that the people who were in this conversation who were from Grinding Gear, which I later found out was a couple of people from Grinding Gear and a couple of people from other large franchises, let's say, were interested because, as you now know, Path of Exile 1 and Path of Exile 2 are going to be separate games, which people did not know before ExileCon. Right? And they were curious what I thought the public opinion and feedback would be on that. Because it actually turned out I had a different take than most people on it. Certainly from some of the diehard fans. It was one of the bigger conversations that I had with execs and stuff, was, what do you think about this? But they were more curious about what led to, and I'm not shitting on Blizzard here, but the disaster that was Shadowlands, right? Like, and seeing the warning signs and stuff. And they were like, well, what from a player side, how did that go? How did your communication with them go? And we talked about it for, I know I got delayed to be at a place by an hour and a half. Because we moved to a different room. We moved to a different room so we could talk more openly about it. Because I was like, I can't really talk about this stuff here because some of it is like private. Some of it is stuff that wasn't aired. They fully understood that. And they were like, okay, so can we go over here and talk about it? And have this conversation. And we did. And it was all truthful. In fact, I didn't say anything that I wasn't allowed to say. Because that's part of why we have the trust to go and visit Blizzard and things like that, is you never reveal things like that. But there are definitely nuance to it, which is difficult to explain to a large audience. But you can with like 5 people who can fire questions backwards and forwards and get clarification. So we had this big conversation. And it was really interesting that the early warning signs, you can't just ignore them. And I actually equated it a little bit to YouTube comments. It's like YouTube comments could be the most obnoxious, outrageous things in the world. But there's usually some spark of truth in there. And you need to acknowledge that in some form. Like, just flat out ignoring it is not wise. But you also can't get one guide. You know, there's one guy who really dislikes your video, but you have a like, look at our last video. It wasn't super viewed because we fucked the YouTube algorithm on our channel. Yet we had a ludicrous amount of likes in the ratio compared to other videos. Like, it was like thousands of likes. Like, people loved that video, but it didn't get watched a lot because it didn't go widespread. So you've got to be careful of all these things, and that's a nuanced conversation that's hard to explain to a large audience when you can't have back and forth and clarifications and things like that. So we had this big conversation, and it kind of reminds me of what's happening here. It's like, we can argue to the ends of time about Endwalker that I disagree that there's a lack of content or laziness. That's my personal opinion. I don't see it as a lack of content or laziness. I would say overall, there's about the same amount of content so far. It's just been divided up and split into different pieces. However, that doesn't mean that Zeplas is wrong, right? Because to her, the way she looks at how the content cycle of Final Fantasy XIV has been for years, there's something missing in maintaining a day-to-day player base. That's how I see it. It's like, you can talk about the specifics of what that might be, but ultimately it's missing some element that's like a day-to-day thing. You can call it a grind or whatever, but it doesn't matter what it's packaged in, right? It's a day-to-day gameplay loop that's something people can work on and not just ignore for a month, and it's like, it doesn't really matter, right? And without that gameplay loop, it has that domino effect of, okay, well, there's less people logging in. Because if all my gameplay loop is roulettes or whatever, I might do that in a group. I don't have to. Doesn't matter. I certainly don't need to work on roulettes with friends. Like, it's sure there'll be people who are like, hey, I always do my roulettes with X. But if they're not there, it doesn't really matter. And ultimately, people can bleed away. And that happens. So you do need that foundation, because people starting FF14 or coming in later or whatever want to see an active, busy world. Of course we do. It's one of the things I talked a lot about with Guild Wars 2, because that game does it exceptionally well, is moving those, forcing players to congregate in certain areas and actually move you off a server if your server is quiet, in order to make you look like you're constantly in a busy world. For all you know, your zone might only contain 12 people, but the game will actively make sure those 12 people are probably together in some form or another. So you actually see each other. And it does give life to a world. You don't want to play in, as much as some people want to play in a sandbox, a lot of people don't. They want to see massive groups of people doing things in MMOs, defeating giant bosses and things. So that's ultimately what seemingly, and I kind of agree, is there anything in Endwalker, even for me, to log in and do that isn't a self-made challenge, which is what Zeplas brings up here. Is like, and what we talked about earlier with the buffet is there's endless things to do in an MMO, and there's self-made challenges, right? There's that you've created these goals yourself. The game isn't actively suggesting you do any of them. It's not pushing it at you. It's not like, hey, there's this cool thing, just brought it out. Might want to go and try and get that. It's going to be a bit of an effort, but there's a thing here for you if you want to go and do it. I don't think there's any of that in FF14 right now, other than self-made challenges to go and do, which I think is a fair point. which I think is a total fair point. And you will bleed away those people who are your day-to-day players, and ultimately that cracks into every other element of it. You know what I mean? I do agree they need another Bosnia. Yeah. Don't call her a cow. Don't come round here, White Knight in Zeplas, right? She's a tough girl. She'll be all right. And if you see the shit she's called me over the years, fucking get on your little white horse and go run off a cliff. You'll be all right. Trust me. Zeplas don't need no defending from anybody. She's all right. She's got that southern hospitality ready for you. Fucking abuse that girl sent me. Fucking bullshit. When anniversary quest? Yeah, soon. She's older than me. It's making it work. Southern hospitality, yeah, for sure. It's because Endwalker content isn't really battle orientated. It's all small, casual slice of life stuff. Yeah, exactly. It's short term, which is what Zeplas was talking about, right? It's short term. It's short term peaks and trough content. It's that even keel content that is seemingly missing right now. And I think they should take that message to heart. Even if I don't personally like crave that, I guess is what I would say. I don't personally crave that. I get why it should exist, right? 100%. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like a lot to do, but not more than once. That's peaks and trough content, right? That's peaks and trough content. Optional, even keel content. Totally get it. especially for the day-to-day players. Yeah, 100%. 100%. I totally get that. But that's how concept was here in Shadowbringers. It might be lacking, but it didn't disappear with Endwalker.
As someone mentioned earlier,
so you played a lot longer than me, Shadowbringers.
Really just setting up intershard travel.
Yeah, probably. But in Shadowbringers, what would have been the day-to-day stuff that you did there? Or was Shadowbringers just so good with its story that people just hung around anyway, farming mounts and things like that? Bosnia was there. So what are you referring to there, Hammer? I was pretty sure that Bosnia was Shadowbringers. Was it day-to-day at all? Couldn't you live in Bosnia if you wanted to, though, to farm all... You got all the relics from stuff there, right? Again, it's that optional choice, right? Yeah, it's the optional choice, because it's not going to be for everybody. There are probably... it's not one or two camps, right? And this is kind of the issue I had with Blizzard for a while, is they put me in the Raider box. And I was like, we're not talking about that. There's more nuance to it. Like, you can't just put me in the Raider box and be like, oh, we need to talk to the Raiders, we need to talk to Preach. Like, that's not going to work, because we talk to all different things. Because the idea is that you have a content that reaches that buffet, that spectrum of players. Some people are going to do Bosnia for like 3 days, get what they need out of it, and leave. Fine. And then other people are going to spend months in there, like grinding things out and doing stuff. And that zone caters to all those different types and everything in between, right? And it's optional. You're not forced to do any of it. You know what I mean? You're not forced to do anything, like, whatsoever. You need to have that banding across it. So it works. You could do it like in a short, because right now, it's like it's simple. Everything is in peaks and troughs, pretty much, right? Nearly everything is peaks and troughs. There's nothing that can be a peak and trough, but also can go on and on and on. Certainly in a massive multiplayer sense, right? Island Expedition technically, I suppose, falls into there, but it's not a big multiplayer experience. And also they're fickle. Player bases burn out. The same thing goes on for a while and stuff. It's really complicated. Yeah. Because, I mean, I've made this argument for a long time, is there's no game dev trying to make a game that people don't want to play. Right? So when it comes to, say, Shadowlands with the Torghast stuff and the Covenants and all that, they truly believed that people would really like it. 100%. 100%. They truly believe that it's going to, you know, they've concluded that. Like, it's going to be a good thing. People are going to buy into this, and people are going to really like it, because it wasn't a monetization thing. It was a systems thing. And they're really going to like that we have all these soul binds with all these choices and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, I have a different take on the matter, right? Like, I have a different take on the matter, but perfectly prepared to be wrong as well. For all I know is like Shadowlands would have come out and people are like, oh, this is way better that I could do all these things. It's way better that my choices are limited on my character. It's so much more engaging. Like, I really wrestled with this choice for so long to do this and all that kind of stuff. So it goes back to the modular design they mentioned in your interview. Yeah, it's really easy, and I'm not sure what Squeenix's methodology is with content production. Is how are they basing? I mean, modular design is based on you're making decisions in January that the players won't see until November, and by the time they get negative feedback in July, it's too late to change what's coming out in November because we're already working on the content for next March. That content is done, it's ready to go, and we're already working on something new that's coming out next March, right? That's the problem with modular design, is your feedback is not being, your iteration and its downhill trend is not being found until months later. And it's too late by then because you've already made the next thing which iterated on it further and kept going down the road, and then you have a dramatic change at some point because that system didn't pay off. So that doesn't work. I actually think Squeenix, from what I could tell, actually does things much more gentler in terms of introducing content. I was a little shocked to see this time the Criterion didn't have more thrown into it. Because like they tend to be quite gentle with how they interact with new content pieces compared to what I've seen. Instead of dramatic, massive shifts in content design, they look a bit, they tend to do things little gentle, backwards and forwards, like ease into it and let it sort of build, listen to each piece of feedback, and come back to it. You mean like not make a ton of it at once, then make a bit and see how it goes? Yeah, like they'll change like one of their systems slightly, gauge the feedback a little bit, so, and then often really ask for a lot of feedback. So we can look to the moving of the raids to being a week, you know, the Savage raids releasing a week later. Is like, we really want your feedback on this. We're going to try this. We're going to see how it works. If we don't like it, we'll move it back. You know, I think they take a lot more care of, they consider the audience to be very sensitive. I think they consider the audience to be very sensitive, and they treat them that way. To be like, you have to be gentle with a sensitive audience. Whereas sometimes WoW is like, I'll smash you in the face with a hammer and we'll see how it goes after that fact. No, and I think it's right. Like, I'm not saying they're all snowflakes or whatever. I'm not saying that. It's like, but there are certain things that I think they know you can't mess with in FF14 too much, or it's really going to upset a lot of people, right? It's really going to upset a lot of people, and you need to be careful with how you implement it and make things happen. I'm kind of curious now with Dawn Trail coming, as like, how bold are they? Because I don't think Squeenix is particularly bold in a lot of their decision making. I think they take their time with it and they see how it goes, which can work out well, but also it can also feel like it's taking a long time to implement change. And if it's something the player base is really not liking, it can feel like you're not being listened to. It feels like you're not being addressed. And it also makes your positive content feel samey. That works. That's the thing as well, right? It can make your content feel really samey because like it's not changing enough. It's kind of the same thing we had last time. I guess the Heaven on High and Deep Dungeons feel a little like that to me. I've got limited experience in them, but they kind of feel the same. Like they feel very, very similar as I go through them. Is like, this isn't too different to what we experienced in the past. Little bitty changes here and there, but nothing too dramatic. And again, it constantly reminds us that we're adventurers. How fuck's it that we rarely ever feel like we're going on adventure by ourselves outside the MSQ?
Into my domain once again.
I don't have that problem in FF.
Mount Rock, New Peasant.
I really don't.
Yours jammingly, Garai the Uncaged. P.S. F. F. X. I. V.
I really don't feel that way, like we're not going on an adventure. The MSQ always makes me feel like I'm going on an adventure. Are you saying outside of the MSQ? Okay, yeah, you are. You're saying outside of the MSQ. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't feel like I'm going on an adventure outside of the MSQ, but honestly, I don't find that a problem in this game. I really don't. With the way this game works, I actually feel like that's okay. I don't have much reason to... I would say I don't really have much reason to, like, actively go out into the open world to do something. But that's my choice, I think. If I was going out doing professions and things, then I would do that. But, yeah. Well, I think a good way of looking at it is we recently did the WoW Hardcore thing, right? And every step you take outside in WoW Hardcore is a decision to be made, an active decision, because it's a dangerous world out there and you could die at any possible moment. Don't feel that way in Final Fantasy. And people was like, oh, could we do like a hardcore challenge in Final Fantasy? I'm like, no, not really. No, not really. That's not going to pay off in this game where everything's like pretty much instanced. You're perfectly safe at all times. Like it's not, but the game isn't designed to work that way. It's not designed to work that way, and I'm totally okay with that here. It's a different game. Same rules don't apply. As similar as they are, it's different. How you doing, Ash? We're good. They could have tied Relics. Relics was the one that Zeplas was going for. I can take the bunnies off now. I thought she had some amazing points, actually. I thought it was pretty fair. I understand where she's coming from. It sounded very familiar to how I felt at certain points in time. Don't agree on everything, obviously, but it would be a boring world if we did.